They thought it was just another Saturday at the Union Market in Denver. Shoppers laughed, children chased bubbles, and the scent of roasted peanuts floated in the air. But beneath the wooden floorboards of one forgotten booth, evil was breathing quiet, hidden waiting, and only one soul heard its heartbeat. Not a man, not a machine, but a 7-year-old German shepherd named Hunter. When he growled not out of threat but from something deeper ancient, his partner Emily didn't question. Because when a dog like Hunter speaks with his nose, he's never wrong. Chapter 1. The Call from Union Market. Denver in late autumn had a certain silence to it, one that settled between the copper leaves curling in the gutters and the gray sky that hovered like a tired ghost over the Rockies. The chill hadn't yet turned bitter, but the breeze carried the first warnings of winter. In the heart of the city, Union Market bustled with its usual eclectic charm. Food trucks lined the edges, the scent of kettle corn mixed with roasted coffee, and booths overflowed with second-hand books, handmade jewelry, and forgotten treasures waiting to be discovered. But beneath all that color and noise, something unseen stirred, and only one living soul seemed to notice. Officer Emily Harper parked her black SUV near the west entrance, her gloved hands wrapped tightly around a thermal mug. She was 34, with a frame both lean and strong from years of field duty. Her dark auburn hair was pulled into a no-nonsense braid, and faint lines traced the corners of her eyes, marks of someone who'd seen too many families cry over missing loved ones. Emily had served with the Denver Police Department's Missing Persons Unit for nearly a decade. Known among her colleagues for her empathy and unyielding instincts, she bore the quiet resilience of a woman who once lost her younger brother to a disappearance no one ever solved. That loss didn't harden her. Instead, it made her relentless. Walking beside her was her partner Hunter, a 7-year-old German shepherd with sable fur and the stature of a soldier. Hunter had once served with a military unit in Iraq before being reassigned as a canine for domestic operations. His left ear bore a small nick from shrapnel, and his amber eyes held an intelligence that sometimes felt eerily human. Unlike most dogs, Hunter didn't bark unless absolutely necessary. His signals were subtle shifts of weight muscle tension, the low growl that now rippled quietly through his chest as they stepped deeper into the market. A vendor had filed a vague report the night before, something about a strange smell near an old woodworking stall. Nothing urgent, but Emily trusted her gut, and her gut had whispered the same unease that now made Hunter's hackles rise. They moved between the booths. A group of teenagers laughed near a cider cart. An elderly woman handed out hand-knit scarves to passing children. And then they reached it, a stall constructed from aged wooden panels with handcrafted tables and chairs stacked like sleeping beasts. A faded sign read, "Barrow's Heirlooms." Dust coated the legs of an antique rocking chair, and beneath the faint polish of furniture wax, Emily could smell something musty off. Hunter froze. His body tensed, tail-still nostrils flaring as he sniffed the corner near the back. The flooring looked slightly uneven, a haphazard patch of newer wood that didn't match the rest of the stall's base. Hunter let out a low, guttural growl. Then, with deliberate motion, he began sniffing in circles around that corner intensely urgently. From the other side of the booth, a man appeared, Rick Barrow, the stall's owner. Mid-50s, wiry frame, salt and pepper beard that hadn't seen a comb in days. His clothes were layered like someone used to cold nights, but his hands were clean with the long, steady fingers of someone who once knew the precision of work. He offered a hesitant smile. "Morning, officer. Can I help you with something?" Emily didn't answer immediately. She let her gaze linger on Hunter, who had now laid down by the suspect patch of wood nose pressed against it, emitting a sound that was somewhere between a whine and a growl. "Mr. Barrow, has there been any construction here recently?" Rick's smile faltered. No, not really. Just fixed a few floorboards after the rain last month." Emily tilted her head. "Mind if I take a closer look?" Rick hesitated, then stepped aside. "Sure, but I told the other officers already this booth's just inventory. Nothing strange back there." Emily paused. "Other officers?" "Yeah. 2 guys came by yesterday. Said they were checking out complaints. Must have been from downtown. Emily frowned and keyed her radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Harper. Any record of other units sent to Union Market yesterday? Possible vendor inspection. After a beat of static, a voice replied, Negative, Officer Harper. No units assigned to that location in the last 72 hours. She looked up sharply. Rick was suddenly pale beads of sweat forming on his brow. Sir, she said, voice cool as the wind moving through the stalls, I'm going to need you to step aside. Standard inspection procedure. Rick took a shaky breath. There's nothing back there. Just old supplies. Emily didn't move. Neither did Hunter. The dog was now pawing lightly at the panel nose fixed on the hidden seam. Emily crouched beside him, her fingers grazing the edges of the mismatched wood. It wasn't nailed down, just wedged in place. She peeled back a section and was met with damp, cracked concrete beneath. Except when she knocked, it rang slightly hollow. You'll want to stop that, Rick said. But his voice didn't carry anger. It carried dread. Emily stood. What is this? Rick didn't answer. He looked past her toward the open walkway as if expecting someone else to arrive. Then, as if driven by something ancient and unseen, Hunter let out one bark. Sharp. Final. Emily understood that bark. It was the signal he used when lives were in danger. Sir, she said again, stepping toward the panel, you need to tell me what's underneath. Rick looked her dead in the eyes, voice low. You don't want to know. But it was too late. In Emily's world, silence was the same as complicity. She retrieved her flashlight and knelt down again, sweeping the beam over the uneven surface. Hunter barked again, this time louder. She stood and looked back at Rick. I'll be back tonight with a team. He opened his mouth to protest, but closed it again. Emily could see the war inside him, a man twisted between fear and guilt. And perhaps a wish to finally be free. As she turned to leave, Hunter remained by the corner of the booth, his body tense, his nose pressed again to the floor. Emily called his name softly. He didn't move at first, as if afraid to leave the secret behind. Finally he followed his ears, still flicking back toward the booth, as if listening to something neither of them could yet explain. And as the breeze shifted again, carrying with it the faint smell of earth rot and something sterile, Emily knew this wasn't just a routine check. Something was buried, something that didn't want to be found. Chapter 2. The Hidden Door and an Unexpected Past. The night had wrapped itself around Denver like a heavy velvet curtain. Street lamps flickered in hazy amber halos, and Union Market stood silent, emptied of weekend laughter and daylight warmth. Only the hum of distant traffic and the occasional rustling of leaves filled the air as Emily Harper parked her unmarked vehicle beside the southern alley. The market, so alive by day, now felt like a sleeping creature, and somewhere beneath its wooden bones something else was stirring. Emily wore black tactical gear instead of her usual uniform. Her braid was tucked under a cap, her body language taut with purpose. She was joined by 2 officers from the Special Investigations Division, Detective Marcus Tillman, a tall, muscular man in his late 40s with dark skin, deep-set eyes, and a quiet steadiness born from decades in homicide. He spoke little but moved with the caution of someone who'd seen too many scenes that ended in silence and blood. Alongside him was Officer Danny Reyes, a recent recruit to SID, mid-30s Latina with sharp brown eyes and an instinctive edge. She carried herself with a blend of alertness and empathy, someone trying to make her mark but not hardened yet. And of course, there was Hunter. The German shepherd moved ahead without leash or command, his body a shadow against the moonlight. His ears twitched at every distant sound, his nose low and twitching, tracking not just scent but memory. Emily trusted him more than any partner she'd ever had. They entered the market through a side door Emily had discreetly unlocked earlier that afternoon. Her boots made no sound on the cold concrete, and neither did the others. They made their way back to Barrow's Heirlooms, the stall now cloaked in darkness save for the glow of Danny's low flashlight. The air was still but stale thick with the scent of sawdust and something fouler beneath. Hunter immediately made his way to the corner they had found earlier. No hesitation. His body tensed, nose pressed to the floor, then he gave a short, urgent bark. Emily crouched beside him and felt for the loose panel again. With Marcus's help, they pried it open. Beneath was a layer of cracked concrete that on closer inspection revealed faint seams, artificial, deliberate. "Bring the tools," Emily whispered. Marcus unslung a compact crowbar and began working at the edge of the panel. The concrete gave way quicker than expected beneath it, a metal hatch. Industrial matte black reinforced with the magnetic lock. Emily reached for the small control pad set into the floor beside it. It had no markings, just a blinking red light. "This is military grade," Marcus muttered, crouching beside her. Someone spent serious money on this. Before she could respond, Hunter began whining low, desperate, pawing the hatch with renewed urgency. Danny looked up. "We opening it," Emily nodded. She retrieved a coded override device from her belt standard issue for raids involving illegal bunkers or panic rooms. She connected it to the pad. The red light blinked 3 times, then turned green. With a pneumatic hiss, the hatch unlocked. A cold breath of air swept up from below. They descended one by one, Emily first, Hunter at her side. The narrow ladder dropped about 15 feet into a narrow corridor lined with pale, sterile tiles. The floor glistened faintly as though recently cleaned. Fluorescent bulbs overhead flickered on via motion sensors, bathing everything in a sickly white glow. At the end of the corridor was a sliding door slightly ajar. Emily motioned for silence and moved forward. Inside the room was chilling. It resembled a small operating theater, metal tables, surgical lamps, an array of medical instruments all neatly organized. The air smelled of antiseptic layered over mildew and rot. Hunter moved toward a large metal cabinet and began barking high-pitched and frantic. Emily opened it. Inside were 5 sealed medical storage boxes, each labeled only by initials. She opened one slowly and gasped. Organs, preserved, cataloged, livers, kidneys, in refrigerated storage. Danny turned pale and looked away. Marcus stared at the setup. "This is black market harvesting. Organized, controlled, not amateur." Emily's radio crackled. "Unit K-97 status check." She responded with one word. "Confirmed. Proceeding." She turned to Marcus. "Secure this room. Start cataloging. Danny with me." Another hallway branched to the right. As they moved, Danny asked, "How do you think this links to Rick Barrow?" Emily didn't answer immediately. She stopped before a locked wooden door at the end of the hall. It was older, mismatched, not like the rest. She pulled out her lockpick kit and worked silently. It clicked open after 20 seconds. Inside was a small room bare except for a metal desk, a cot, and dozens of old surgical textbooks. On the wall was a photo Rick Younger wearing scrubs, holding a toddler in his arms. The girl's name, Olivia, was scribbled on the back. Emily picked up a journal from the desk. The entries were handwritten, notes on surgical procedures, descriptions of anonymous donors. But toward the end, the tone changed. Pages filled with words like, "Regret forgiveness, they promised to let her go if I stayed." One final page was stained with tears. "She was only 12, Emily whispered. Danny looked confused. Who his daughter? Olivia. She was taken. They made him choose work for them or never see her again. He complied. But she disappeared anyway. At that moment, a distant noise echoed from above, footsteps. Multiple. Emily signaled for silence. Back up the ladder, Rick Barrow stood trembling, his face ghostly pale. He held a flash drive in one hand and a revolver in the other. "Don't shoot," he whispered. "I'm not here to stop you. I want it to end." Emily raised a hand slowly. "Mr. Barrow, what's on that drive?" "Everything. Names, clients, doctors. They forced me to do surgeries on runaways, on addicts. They gave me Olivia's voice on tape once to keep me going. But I never saw her again." Hunter sat beside him, strangely calm. Rick knelt, placing the flash drive on the ground. "I've lived in hell. Maybe this will buy me peace." Emily took the drive. "You did the right thing coming back." He looked at her eyes hollow. "It's too late for right." And with that he placed the gun gently on the ground and sank into a sitting position against the wall. Chapter 3. Shadows Below the Earth. The hatch groaned as it closed behind them, sealing the stale underground air with a slow metallic shudder. Emily Harper descended first into the depths of the hidden compound flashlight beam, sweeping the tiled corridor, her sidearm drawn. Beside her, Hunter moved with fluid precision, his paws silent on the cold floor ears, flicking toward every sound. The air down here was different now, not just stale, but tinged with a coppery, sterile tang that made the back of her throat tighten. Detective Marcus Tillman followed next, eyes steady behind square-rimmed glasses, his expression unreadable but focused. Officer Danny Reyes, slightly winded, brought up the rear, clutching a digital map tablet tied into the squad's tracking system. Each had a role. Each had been trained, but none of them had seen anything quite like this. Emily led the team past the surgical room discovered earlier, turning down a side hallway not marked on the blueprints. The lights here were flickering irregularly, casting long fractured shadows. The walls felt closer together, the air thicker. Then Hunter stopped. His nose pointed toward a narrow door labeled Storage Level B. His body stiffened, hackles rising. He emitted a growl low enough to vibrate through Emily's boots. She nodded at Marcus, who stepped forward and forced the door open with a tactical pry bar. It gave with a shriek of metal, revealing a room chilled by industrial refrigeration units. The moment they entered, all flashlights converged on the same horror. 5 women alive, restrained, pale, terrified. They were laid out on medical stretchers in a line, IVs taped to their arms, monitors softly beeping. Their eyes followed the intruders, full of pleading. Some bore scars along their flanks. One had a surgical site stitched but still raw. They weren't prepped for surgery. They were already halfway through it. Danny's face paled as she rushed to unstrap the nearest woman, a Latina, maybe late 20s, with tear-streaked cheeks and an emergency bracelet with only a first name, Maya. "They're sedated but aware," Danny whispered, her voice cracking. "We need medics. Now!" Emily radioed for a medevac team and hazmat support, her voice cold with restraint. "Unit K-97, active hostages confirmed. 5 female victims, mid to late 20s. Require emergency extraction." Marcus was scanning the room. "We're missing something," he muttered. "You don't go through this trouble for 5. There's more." Hunter, as if on cue, turned sharply and darted toward a vent on the side wall. He pawed at it furiously, then barked loud, forceful, the same bark he used for live targets. Emily helped pull the vent aside, revealing a narrow crawl space that stretched behind the compound. "I'll go," she said. "You sure?" Marcus asked. "Hunter's already in." The crawl space was tight and dusty, but after a few meters it opened into a hidden chamber. Files lined the walls, plastic crates filled with handwritten notes, Polaroids and worn manila folders. In the center was a desk, the surface covered in labeled envelopes, blood test results and intake forms. There were hundreds of names. And there, nestled beneath a bundle of folders, Emily found the red collar tag that Rick had shown her in the photograph from the night before. It read, Olivia Barrow. The air left her lungs. Beside the tag was an old dust-covered folder. Inside were images of Olivia taken from what appeared to be a hidden camera. The last one was dated 6 years ago. The intake form listed her as Donor 017. Emily closed the folder slowly, her jaw clenched. Whatever Rick had feared had happened. Olivia had not been rescued. She had become another line in a record book. She stood there for a moment before noticing Hunter sitting beside a crate in the corner. His paw was resting gently on a pouch strapped to his harness. Something had been tucked there, she realized. She opened the pouch and found a small worn USB drive labeled in Rick's handwriting, Insurance. Rick had done it. Before leaving earlier that night, he had quietly slipped the drive into Hunter's gear. Not a grand gesture, not a confession, just a quiet hope that someone would find it and finish what he could not. As she rejoined the others, she handed the USB to Marcus without a word. His face darkened as he saw the label. Danny was helping stabilize the 5 rescued women who were now semi-alert and whispering fragmented phrases. They paid cash we never saw faces. We were picked off the street. A new figure entered the scene. FBI agent Julia Grant, early 40s tall with a commanding presence and dark curly hair pulled into a tight bun. Her suit was crisp despite the sweat on her brow, and her voice carried immediate authority. "Harper," she said, flashing credentials. "I've been briefed. We're taking jurisdiction." Emily nodded. "We found the drive. Rick Barrow gave it to us. He says it has names, client lists, locations. Grant took it without hesitation. We've been trying to link this operation to a string of missing person cases spanning 3 states. You just blew it wide open." Danny asked, "What about Rick Grant?" Hesitated. "His cooperation changes things. But there's a federal warrant already on record. He'll be detained. Depending on what's on that drive, maybe he walks away with time served. Maybe not." Emily didn't argue. She only watched as medics lifted Maya and the others out one by one. Hunter lingered by the file room door, eyes fixed on something Emily couldn't see. She walked to him crouched and whispered, "We did what we could." But the look in Hunter's eyes told her the job wasn't done. Not until every name in that room had a story. And a grave. Chapter 4. The Assault and the Truth Revealed. The compound had gone quiet, too quiet. Emergency lights flickered red along the low corridors, casting shadows that danced and vanished with every step. Emily Harper felt the change before she heard it, a hum in the walls, a pressure in the air. Hunter's ears perked, nose raised. Then the bark, sharp, urgent, not in alarm but in warning. From the far tunnel, labeled Cold Storage Access B, came a metallic crash followed by the echo of boots. Not the measured stride of first responders, these were rushed, purposeful, and synchronized. Seconds later, the unmistakable sounds of suppressed gunfire snapped through the silence like twigs underfoot. "Contact multiple assailants, West Access Point," Agent Julia Grant's voice crackled through the radio. "Unknown force-sized tactical gear, faces masked. We are under attack." Emily was already moving, signaling Danny and Marcus to take defensive positions. Hunter darted ahead, rounding the corner toward the surgical wing. He stopped abruptly and turned to look back, eyes locked onto Emily, silently urging her forward. In the hallway beyond, the chaos unfolded. 3 masked men in black body armor moved with military precision, sweeping through the compound. Their weapons were customized carbines, and they communicated with silent hand signals. One paused at the junction ahead, checking a biometric reader. These weren't random thugs, this was a cleanup crew. Emily motioned for Marcus to cover the main hallway while she pushed toward the secured recovery room where the rescued women had been moved just minutes earlier. But as she turned the corner, a girl collided into her, young, barefoot, shivering. "Please," she whispered, tears streaking her face. "I'm Lena. They were going to take me next." Lena, 17, slender and pale, with auburn curls matted to her cheeks and an IV mark on her arm. Her hospital gown fluttered with every trembling breath. There was a quietness in her fear. Not the raw panic of someone who didn't understand, but the resignation of someone who'd survived things far worse than what she could articulate. Emily dropped to one knee. "You're safe now, but we have to move. Stick with me. Don't let go." Hunter moved between them like a living shield, pressing his body protectively between Lena and the hallway. His tail was stiff, hackles raised. A low rumble emanated from his chest. He had caught a scent. Just as Emily stood, a flash of motion appeared ahead. One of the assailants had broken off and was now stalking them. His rifle was up-trained but not firing. He was trying to capture, not kill. Emily didn't wait. Hunter, disable. The dog launched forward, powerful and fast. He lunged at the attacker's wrist, knocking the weapon aside and sending the man crashing into the wall. The rifle clattered to the ground and Emily surged forward, elbow cracking against the assailant's jaw as he fell. But there was no time to secure him. More boots echoed. Reinforcements were coming. "Backtrack," Emily shouted. To the hatch. They ran, Emily, Lena, and Hunter navigating through the maze of halls now lit only by emergency red. When they reached the intersection near the central terminal, a shout stopped them. Rick Barrow, bloodied and limping, was being dragged by one of the masked men, a tall figure with a black armband and a scar across the left temple. His face was mostly hidden, but his voice, though distorted, held venom. "You never learn, Barrow." Rick's eyes caught Emily's. "It's out," he wheezed. "I hit the switch." At that moment, all security monitors in the corridor lit up grainy footage of surgeries, patient intake transaction logs, facial photos of buyers and facilitators, all being streamed live through a scrambled uplink. The masked man turned, snarling, "You'll regret that." But he was too late. Rick slammed his heel into the man's shin, and Emily fired. The shot struck the attacker's shoulder, sending him backward. Rick collapsed. Emily grabbed his arm. "Can you move?" He gritted his teeth. "Doesn't matter. Just take her." Behind them, another masked figure opened fire. Emily ducked behind a steel beam shielding Lena, while Hunter lunged again, this time not for a disarm, but for the throat. Blood sprayed. The figure collapsed in gurgles. Danny and Marcus arrived seconds later, flanking from the auxiliary access. "We've got multiple down at the south quadrant," Marcus barked, eyes scanning. "Evac is blocked. We'll need a new exit." Emily's comm buzzed. "Harper, this is Grant. Local networks picked up the stream. It's gone viral, millions of views in 5 minutes. We're tracking server relays now. Whoever did this, thank them." She looked down at Rick. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes were focused. "Olivia, did you see her file?" Emily nodded. "We have it, and the world does too." Sirens echoed faintly outside. Citywide backup was en route, but the sound of distant rotors told her something more. Federal air support had arrived. This was now a war zone. "Time to go," she ordered. As they ascended toward the hatch, Hunter gave one final glance toward the room below, a glance that lingered not on the bodies or the blood, but the faces of the girls still waiting to be found. Chapter 5. Justice and a New Beginning. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of Denver's Civic Auditorium, casting warm, fractured rainbows across the polished marble floor. The storm had passed, both literal and metaphorical. Outside, the city moved on as it always did, unaware of how close it had come to letting evil fester beneath its feet. Inside, a quiet ceremony was underway. Officer Emily Harper stood at attention near the podium. Her black uniform was pristine, her hair tied in its usual braid, but her eyes, those eyes that had stared into darkness and refused to blink, held the weight of everything she had seen. She didn't care for ceremonies. She didn't need medals. But she accepted the day as a necessary punctuation to a story that had demanded its ending. Beside her sat Hunter, calm and alert, wearing a freshly polished tactical harness. Around his neck hung the Medal of Valor for canine service, the highest commendation granted by the Denver Police Department. He didn't understand the clapping, the cameras, or the speeches, but he understood the woman beside him. And that was enough. At the front of the room, the mayor of Denver, Benjamin Carr, a broad-shouldered man in his early 60s with silver hair and a deep baritone voice, took the stage. Known for his no-nonsense leadership during Denver's economic recovery, Mayor Carr had the air of a man who valued action over words, but today, even he was visibly moved. Sometimes he began justice hides in silence, in basements, in the shadows we refuse to look into. But sometimes justice has a voice, or in this case, a bark. Laughter rippled through the audience, mostly composed of officers, survivors, and quietly grieving families. He continued, "Today, we honor Officer Harper and K-9 Hunter, not just for the takedown of the trafficking network that haunted 4 states, but for giving faces to the nameless, stories to the forgotten, and hope to those who believed they'd been abandoned." Emily nodded slightly but said nothing. Words had their place, but healing came differently for each person. For her, it came in action. Later that afternoon, in a quieter corner of the city, Emily parked outside a modest shelter nestled near the outskirts of the Denver foothills. Lena, now dressed in jeans and a hoodie, sat in the passenger seat, chewing nervously on a straw. Her hair was freshly washed, her face fuller than it had been days before. 17, with fire in her eyes that refused to be extinguished, Lena was the kind of soul who refused to be defined by her pain. Her survival had made her braver than she'd ever asked to be. "This the place?" she asked softly. Emily nodded. "It's called Willow Run. They take in survivors. Girls like you, women who want a second shot, and animals that do too." Inside Willow Run Rescue Ranch was a modest facility surrounded by open land and weather-worn fencing. Dogs barked in the distance. Volunteers moved back and forth between kennels and offices. The woman who ran the place, Marianne Foster, greeted them with a smile that didn't hide her years. Mid-50s, short and sturdy, with thick gray curls tucked under a bandana and arms dusted in dog hair, Marianne had the air of a former social worker who'd grown tired of bureaucracy and built something real instead. "You must be Emily," she said, shaking hands with a grip like oak. "And this must be the famous Hunter." Hunter responded with a low chuff and a polite tail wag. "And you," she said, turning to Lena, "look like someone who's got more fight left in her than most." Lena shrugged. "Guess we'll find out." That afternoon, Emily and Marianne walked the perimeter while Lena met the younger volunteers. They watched her kneel beside an old, one-eyed Labrador and gently stroke its ears. Marianne smiled. "She's not broken," she said. "She's just waiting for someone to remind her she's whole." Emily looked at Hunter, who now dozed under a shady patch of cedar ears, still alert despite his posture. "Neither is he, not after everything." Marianne nodded. "Dogs are funny that way. They don't dwell. They don't ask why. They just keep showing up. Every day. Every storm." As evening fell, Emily sat on the back porch of the shelter, Lena beside her. A quiet settled over the land, the kind that only comes after survival, after noise and fire and fear have finally burnt out. Lena spoke first. "I got a letter from my mom." Emily turned slightly surprised. She said, "She forgives me for running away, for disappearing. Said she saw the live stream and cried for the first time in years." Emily let the silence hold space for that weight. "She wants me to come home eventually, but I don't think I'm ready. Not yet." "You don't have to be," Emily said. "You just have to know you're not alone anymore." Lena gave a small nod, then looked down at the golden retriever puppy now curled in her lap. "I named her Olive, after Olivia Barrow." Emily swallowed. She'd have liked that. Meanwhile, across the state, arrests were still being made. The network had crumbled. The leaked files had exposed high-profile names, politicians, physicians, a tech executive from Arizona. There were suicides, plea deals, and trials ahead. As for Rick Barrow, his cooperation earned him a reduced sentence. But more than that, it earned him a letter from Lena's mother. "You gave my daughter a second chance, even if it cost you your first. For that, I forgive you." He read it every morning, every night. In time, the world would move on. Stories would fade. But not for Emily, not for Hunter, not for Lena. Because justice once found must be carried, and love once lost must be shared. That spring, Emily filed for reassignment. She wasn't leaving the force, but she requested community reintegration, a new program pairing trauma survivors with rescue animals for therapeutic care. Her first case, a 10-year-old boy named Jack who hadn't spoken since his sister disappeared. Hunter sat beside him every session. By week 4, Jack said one word: dog. Emily smiled. It was enough. In a world that often feels too fast, too loud, and too cruel, sometimes healing begins with a quiet act of courage. A girl who dares to hope again, a man who risks everything to make things right, or a dog who listens to the silence beneath the ground and refuses to walk away. This story reminds us that evil hides not just in shadows, but in places where no one looks behind polite smiles, beneath busy streets within forgotten souls. But light doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It only needs to shine where no one else dares to hold it. Maybe you've been through something dark. Maybe you know someone who carries their pain in silence. Or maybe, like Emily and Hunter, you're just trying to do one right thing in a world that needs more good. If this story touched your heart today, please share it with someone who still believes in justice, loyalty, and second chances. Leave a comment to tell us how it moved you, and if you believe in the quiet power of goodness, write Amen below as a prayer for all who are still waiting to be found. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Tales of bravery, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between people and the animals who save us in more ways than we know. May God bless you and all those still searching for their way home.